if you have a deposit right now, but like myself previously, you're sort of sitting on the fence and waiting for things to either feel better or to learn more or to know more, and you don't know if it's the right time to invest, then this is absolutely the video for you. In this one, we're going to talk about mine and Simon's experiences as investors who have bought multiple properties, as well as how other previous clients of ours have overcome their own fear and stepped into the market safely over time. Boom. Didn't miss a beat. Now, the first thing I wanted to say is it's completely normal to feel stressed out every single time you put yourself into debt, because unfortunately my brain doesn't know the difference between debt and a bear trying to like eat me in my bedroom. And so the reality is, guys, I've bought 17 properties. Thankfully, I've sold a whole bunch of them now, but from those properties, even the last one I bought, I completely shat myself for the first 2 weeks. Like, I had a few breakdowns to Simon. He's like, dude, what's going on? And I'm like, it is still uncomfortable and scary. Now, obviously, dude, you've done a whole lot in the last 4 or 5 years as well. Like, how do you feel each time you buy? Like, obviously you get stronger, but it doesn't mean it's any less uncomfortable.
No, it's always been an overwhelming experience purchasing a property. It's always been scary, you know, going through the mortgage documents with a mortgage broker, reading the fine print on those mortgage documents as well.
Got me, I don't want them to get me.
Signing your life away. It's a scary reality, but I'm a bit of a forward thinker as well. So I think about the opportunity cost of, okay, if I do nothing, what's going to happen, versus if I do something, what could potentially happen. And that has sort of helped me overcome those fears and those challenges. But at the same time, the first property for me was the scariest experience of my life, but at the same time, the most exciting experience of my life, because I'd spent a lot of time saving that deposit, learning about it. And then when I was ready to finally pull the trigger, I was actually quite excited about that opportunity. But then once the deal was done, there was a lot of those fears that resurfaced and showed themselves. And it's like, okay, cool, well, now you've got to figure out how to do this. But I think the biggest thing that helped me at that point in time was support. Support from you, support from Crystal, support from my mortgage broker, support from my property managers, support from my solicitors, all these people in my life that were experienced investors. I could lean on them and have these open discussions. And what I realized is exactly what you just said. It is completely normal, and every single person goes through these things. It's just trying to find the confidence to overcome those challenges regardless.
I remember even our sister Crystal, like, I was driving down, I think it was either her second or third property maybe, and we had been buying these suburbs for clients for literally years. We'd probably bought 200 properties on these beachside suburbs in Brisbane. She knew the suburb like the back of her hand. She's also got a photographic memory, and she was driving and I was sitting next to her, and we're going around in circles, and I'm kind of like, I know where the house is, and I'm like, I thought she missed it, and then we missed it again, and I'm like, Crystal, what the F's going on? And she's like, she was so like anxious and nervous that like her frontal lobe had completely switched off, and she'd missed the property. Now, that was someone who had bought over 300 properties at the time for clients, a bunch of properties for ourselves. I was sitting in the car with her, and she still felt that way. So I suppose the first thing is, guys, it's completely natural the way that you're feeling. But one question that I ask myself and our clients sometimes, and I've asked you as well, is like, what would your life look like if you continued to do what you were doing and you didn't figure out a way to get financially free before you were 65 or 70? Like, what is the impact for you of not investing? And I think that's a question we seriously have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to really sit down and have that deep think about your future and your life, because for a lot of people watching this video right now, you're probably somewhere in your 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, and you've got a long time to go. And that's what I want you all to realize, is you've got a lot of living to go, which is super exciting.
So one of the questions I've asked myself for a long time is like, where do I want to be in the future, and why do I want to be there? And for me, my vision, the same as you, bro, is I want choices to spend time with my family, my friends, to train, hopefully surf again soon. Like, I've been talking about it for too long now. You know, like, travel, volunteer my time, like, do meaningful work with great people like we get to work with every day, and have a zest for life. Like, a long time ago, I made a decision, like from reading that Winston Churchill quote, which is, I decided to live my life in the arena. Now,
Love that.
living life in the arena means you get bashed up. You're going to have mental health stuff. You're going to have ups and downs. At times, you're going to be so excited and so thrilled, and other times you're going to lose games and you're going to be beaten up, and it's going to take a toll. But it's so fun being engaged in your own life and deciding that I'm prepared to confront my fear and do it anyway, which is that book that we read so many years ago. And it's just a case of one slow step at a time, like we've talked about in so many previous videos. It starts with a desire to want to change your life because you know you're worth it, and you are worth it. And then to save that first deposit, or to use the equity from your own home, and then to get educated, and then to decide, do you want to do it on your own and figure it out like I did, or do you want to do it with the support of other people and get a better plan in place and get a better outcome? But all of these things, if you approach them one step at a time, will end up getting you to the result. And the impact of not doing it is, imagine you go on to the pension. Imagine you don't get to spend the time with your kids growing up. You don't get to their sports carnival. Imagine you do work that you don't enjoy, and slowly over time it just keeps cutting at you to the point where you're a version of yourself that you can't even relate to anymore. And it's a case of, I don't fucking want that. Like, I don't want my life to look like that. And I feel like I've gone through more bumps and bruises and cuts than if I had have gone the safe path. But now, 11, 12 years on into my journey, everything's starting to change because 12 years ago, I decided to change.
And I think the beautiful thing about overcoming those situations and overcoming those challenges is you become a better version of yourself. Now, we don't improve, we don't grow when we're living within our comfort zones. We just plateau. But if you're constantly challenging yourself in any which way, you're going to be growing, you're going to be learning, you're going to become a better person. And there's a lot of challenges that you have to overcome as an investor. It's scary stuff. So if you don't have the stomach for it, don't do it. Like Warren Buffett says that. He's like, if you can't sit there and watch your stocks come back by 40%, then you shouldn't be in the market. And that scares the hell out of me as well. But still, like, you've got to have the stomach for it. And for me, one of the pulling forces is certainly having choices, to certainly get some time back, but it's also to have a legacy. It's also to give something to my kids. It's also to support my family for the rest of their life, because the way that I can see the market moving forward is it appears to be getting harder and harder and harder for first timers to get into the market. Now, when my kids are in their mid-20s looking at maybe buying their first property, if I can support them in any which way, I would be so over the moon to be able to do that. And I think everybody listening to this video would feel the same. It's having that legacy. It's creating that generational wealth where you're getting out of the system and you're not just forced to work for somebody else for your entire life and then maybe end up on the pension. So the opportunity cost is far too great to not overcome those challenges and to not become the best version of myself and to not stare that fear head on and still work through it and breathe through it and continue executing my plans and my goals.
You know, I love this. I wanted to give you guys an example of a few people that we've worked with and that are friends of ours that have like gone through this journey of confronting it. Now, one of the guys' names was Dave. He inspired me so much and completely changed my life. So when I bumped into him, I think I'd already bought somewhere between 7 and 9 properties. And as soon as I met him, I went, like, I've made some mistakes. There's a different way to do this. Now, Dave, as a household income, never earned more than $100,000 per year. And he was the perfect example of chipping away at it. Now, he was not a high risk taker, but he took calculated action about once every 5 to 7 years. So when I met him, he'd bought his first property in Sydney 25 years ago in the Hills District. And then he'd bought another one 15 years ago and another one 10 years ago. He'd engaged us because even though he'd done such great work, he didn't know Brisbane and he wanted us to help him buy a house and build a granny flat up here, which we helped him do. Now, when I came up and talked to him over lunch, he's like, I said, what did you do, man? Like, how did you get into this position? Because by the time I met him, he'd basically paid off all of his properties plus his own home outright. And he was getting 150 grand a year of income. And he said, Ben, I saved a little bit of my money. When I had a deposit, I bought a property. When I had a little bit more money, which was normally about 5 to 7 years later, I did it again. And that's literally all he did. And then he's like, about 10 years ago in Sydney, they changed the rules for granny flats. And as soon as they did, I went and built 3 granny flats on the 3 investment properties that I had. And he's like, I've done nothing but pay principal and interest and chip away over time. When I met him, he was 50. He was basically looking to completely retire and he was done. His kids were raised and him and his wife were going to travel the world and have a ball. Now that inspired me so much to the point where I actually sold off almost my whole portfolio to the point where I had 1 investment and my own home, and I rebuilt a different sort of portfolio of absolute blue chip quality stuff in great locations or houses and granny flats, because I'm like, I can do this. If this guy did it on 100 grand a year and I'm earning a little bit more, I can do this.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is it's not too complicated, you know?
Simple.
And that's what I love about our channel. We get to educate people about how simple property investing can actually be if done correctly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, first timers try to overcomplicate things. They try to understand exactly how every single step of the process is going to unfold over the next 20 years. And when I would love to have all of that information, unfortunately, you do just have to trust the process. You do just have to trust the universe and take that action sometimes. But
I love this quote, sorry to interrupt you, from
go.
Jim Rohn, when like he used to get paid by the top 500 companies to go in and talk, and they're like, Jim, can you tell us what's going to happen in the future? And he's like, I can. And everyone leans forward and he's like, about the same as the past. There'll be times where properties go up, sideways and down, but over 20 years or 30 years or 50 years, the long-term trend has always been in the capital cities strong. Over 100 years, it's been over 11% growth per year. In 50 years, it's been over 9.5. Over 20 years, it's been over 8. But why don't you share Jackson's story, like one of our good mates?
I'd love to share Jackson's story because this is quite inspiring for somebody who was just dealt a shit set of cards. Like, let's just put it honestly. Sorry, Jax, if you're watching this one, I'm going to open up about your situation, mate. But look, he came from a single parent household, certainly not very wealthy by any stretch of the means. Grew up in Gympie, bad kid growing up, dealing with ADHD, never really accepted at school, never really excelled at school, never really found his path until he fell into the fitness world, and then he became probably the best personal trainer on the entire Sunshine Coast, built a really good social following, and then a couple of years, or I think about 4 years ago, we met Jackson, and he's been a great mate for us, and he's just such a positive bloke. He's such a hardworking guy. He's got so much perspective about life, but he opened up to us and he was like, I never really thought it was going to be achievable for me to buy a house. I just look at the people around me in my life and the people that I grew up with, and it's just not something that people did. But we were able to slowly but surely educate Jackson. We sent him through some podcasts to listen to. We pointed him in the right direction of some books that he can read as well, so that he can learn a little bit more. And then once he got focused, he started saving up that deposit. Now, when he was out there ready to buy his first property, the market had started to move extremely quickly. So he was anticipating to buy a nice renovator right on the beach up here on the Sunshine Coast that he was going to renovate, add some value to, use that equity to then go out there and buy another investment property. But 2020 hit, he hadn't got the full deposit there yet, and the market started going through the roof up here on the Sunshine Coast. So he was quickly forced to change his strategy, and then this knocked his confidence a bit, and he's like, maybe it's not the right time to buy. He got hit with a huge challenge that he had to overcome. He had to completely pivot his strategy and then go out there and find something different. From there, he actually found a beautiful piece of land in one of the new developments out off the Sunshine Motorway, and ended up building his house. Now, through this period, he had massive delays on his piece of land. He was paying the mortgage on that piece of land, which was costing him money to hold short term. He kept getting these variations sent through from the building company that was jacking up the cost of his build dramatically. So it ended up costing him a lot more. Each and every single turn of his journey, he was dealt another challenge that he had to overcome. But finally ended up completing the project. He's got a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a big piece of land in a really quality street in one of these new developments. And upon completion, because it took so long and because the market had performed so well, he ended up with $300,000 worth of equity in the portfolio, which is probably better than what he would have been able to do from the beachside renovator as well. So in hindsight, everything worked out, but over that 2-year period that it took him to work through that process, it was challenge after challenge, and he had to overcome all of those things. And because of his resilience, because of his background, he was able to do it. And because he had the support from his friends and his community of like-minded people, educating him and motivating him to continue pushing forward. And now he's in a position where he can actually release that equity and go and expand his investment portfolio even further. So it's just really cool to see that no matter what your circumstances are, you can overcome your challenges and you can do it anyway.
I love that so much, because what's not just cool about this is the person Jackson's become as a result of confronting that fear. Like, he's so happy in his own home. He's built this ridiculous home gym. He's proud of what he's got, and he's excited about the future. And instead of feeling like he jumped out of a plane, he now, like everybody that's ever bought before, realized it's just like stepping off a gutter. And the first time you do read a building and pest, or look at the market, or start getting educated, or talk to a solicitor or an accountant, it's overwhelming because it's like a new language. But slowly over time, once you get comfortable with that language and realize that all you're trying to do is buy the best location that you possibly can afford in Australia, wherever that looks for you, and buy what your parents would have bought to raise you as a kid if they could have afforded the right thing. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And I suppose this video is all about just sending you that message of it's not going to be that easy, because the cycle at the moment and the system works from you start working at 15 and you finish at 70. I don't know, that's 55 years, I suppose.
It's a long time.
And we're talking about helping you get there through different ideas in 15, 20, 25 years. So of course you're going to have to confront some stuff to break what other people have been doing for hundreds of years around the world. But in reality, if you can learn a little bit and if you can stretch yourself a little bit, and we talk about safety all the time, we're certainly not go out there, buy stuff that you can't afford and get yourself in a vulnerable position. We want people to have buffers. We want them to have good jobs. We want them to have security. We want them to spend less than they can afford. And we want them to get great rent returns in suburbs with low vacancy rates, so they're not freaking out. But, you know, with these videos, or maybe if you become one of the small number of people that we work with each month, you know, together, I think you can achieve what you want to achieve. And trust me, as someone who's confronted my fear, like, my life has changed so much for the better, to the point where, like, where I saw myself and where I am mainly mentally, like spiritually, physically, is so far beyond where I was hoping to be at this age and this time, and financially as well, that, like, all I want to do now is help. And that's where this journey ultimately leads. Once you've got enough for yourself and you're not living in fear every day, or you're not living in necessity every day, you get a chance to see things a little bit clearer and a little bit more 2020. And you know, as a business now, like this month, we've finally got to the point where it's like we're contributing to a local charity that feeds homeless people, that if we want to go and volunteer our time there, we can. Got people walking into this charity every day that are like, I can't afford to feed my kids today, or I'm really struggling, I'm going to commit suicide today, and there's support there and we get to contribute. I never would have been able to do that if I had never have invested.
If you're in survival mode.
Completely. It's like, it's not just about you. It's like, it's about your kids. It's about your parents. It's about your friends that you inspire. It's about all of your colleagues that once you start taking action, beautiful people come into your life and you can help them in a way that you can't even imagine right now. And that's what we want for you by confronting your fear.
Yeah, plus the community around you, you know, like, there's so much support that we can all do. And I think it's just, if not for anything but to become a better version of yourself, to become, you know, the best person that you were meant to be in this particular life. And, you know, I would highly recommend everyone going out there and playing with some compound growth calculators so you can look at the numbers with this sort of stuff as well. You mentioned 100 years over 11%, 50 years over 9%, 20 years over 8%. If you look at going out there and buying just a $600,000 quality investment grade property in the right market at the right time, if you were to hold that property for 20 years and get about a 6% return over that 20-year period compounded, that $600,000 property in 20 years should be worth $1.6 million. So you made $1 million over the next 20 years just by buying one investment property. You know, you might be earning $100,000 per year right now. That would put your income up to $150,000 per year over the next 20 years by just investing in one investment property. And the beautiful thing about property is you get tenants in there and they pay for the majority of your mortgage as well. So it doesn't cost you too much money to hold short term either.
I remember the first time I started to look at like the, purchase price of 500K on a home, the rent of $500 a week, and then the costs. And I was like, so you're telling me like I can get control of this asset, the bank will give me 9 out of every $10, and it's only going to cost me $150 a week with the principal to own this thing and to have control of it that could potentially double in 20 years. I'm like, I didn't believe it. Like I was actually at this seminar, it was the first one I'd ever gone to, and I was sitting in the front row and I'm just like, to the guy, I started laughing at him and he's like, what are you laughing at, man? And I'm like, I don't believe you. Like, I just flat out said it. I was like, I was 23. I'd only read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and one other book. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't believe you. And there was 50 people in the room and he's like, well, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me show you the numbers. And then he went through it and I'm like, I'm buying property.
I'm in. I'm all in.
Because his example at that time was like, I could own a property for $36 a week on an interest-only loan at 4.5% at the time. And I'm like, the penny dropped. And then after it, I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I just didn't know. And he's like, look, I'm so glad you asked the question because everyone else was thinking the same thing. Like when you look at the numbers, it's not that challenging to do property if you look at them worst case, you know what I mean? Like lower rent, higher interest rate, good savings buffer and protect yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm all in on property nowadays as well. I absolutely love it. And we just want you guys to find the confidence that you need to go out there and achieve your goals. Obviously, if you're watching this video today, you have a passion for property investing, or you're maybe starting to develop that passion for property investing. And we just want you to get the best results. And the reality is, there is going to be some overwhelming experiences. There is going to be some challenges to overcome. But over the longer term, it will put you in a much better financial position and give you far more choices in life. Now, myself and Ben are fortunate enough to run a buyer's agency where we do help a small number of people invest in the Brisbane property market every single month. And if you're in a position where you've built that deposit and you're thinking about purchasing your first investment property, then we would love to offer you a free one-on-one strategy session. You can book that strategy session by heading over to our website, www.pumpedonproperty.com, and following the free strategy session links to book in a call with either myself, Simon, or Ben here, where we'll talk about exactly where you're at today, exactly where you want to be in the future. We'll help you understand some of the challenges that you may be facing at the moment and help you overcome those challenges. We'll help you understand the property market a little bit better, and then you can take that information and go out there and crush it yourself, or become one of the small number of people that we work with every single month, and we'll guide you through that process. We'll hold your hand through that entire process and ensure you get a great property that will hopefully set you up for a great future. But either way, we wish you all the best of luck, and thanks so much for watching today's video.
Whew, that's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that. So nice, eh? Oh.